and they're in my bed right now, and the thought was you don't really need research in this field.
Alexandra Horowitz runs the Dog Cognition Lab at Barnard College in New York, which is part of Columbia University. She is the author of several books about dogs, the best known of which is called Inside of a Dog, What Dogs See, Smell, and Know. Here's one brief passage that we asked her to read, page 7 of the paperback, if you want to follow along.
I've gotten inside of the dog and have glimpsed the dog's point of view. You can do the same. If you have a dog in the room with you, what you see in that great furry pile of dogness is about to change.
Inside of a Dog was Horowitz's first book. It was published in 2009, and it was a significant bestseller. Now it's considered a classic. At least I consider it a classic.
Go look at a dog. Go on, look. Maybe at one lying near you right now, curled around his folded legs on a dog bed, or sprawled on his side on the tile floor, paws flitting through the pasture of a dream. Take a good look. And now, forget everything you know about this or any dog.
Today on Freakonomics Radio, we will take a good look at dogs, try to forget everything we know, and try to understand them from the inside out. It is another installment of the Freakonomics Radio Book Club, in which we interview the author of a noteworthy book and hear some of the best passages read aloud. You're going to like this one, I promise, even if you are a cat person. Alexandra Horowitz grew up in Colorado and always loved dogs, but it took her a long time before realizing she could study them for a living. As an undergrad, she was a philosophy major at Penn. She moved to New York and worked as a lexicographer for the Merriam-Webster Dictionary and then as a fact-checker for The New Yorker. And there, she worked on some pieces by Oliver Sacks, the freewheeling neurologist best known for writing Awakenings and The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
And I just adored his combination of this empathetic science and sort of philosophical musings.
At this point, she thought she might like to become that kind of writer. She went back to school and wound up with a PhD in cognitive science from the University of California, San Diego.
It's basically a PhD that's interdisciplinary. So philosophers are asking, what is the mind? Neuroscientists are interested in examining the brain. Psychologists want to look at behavior. So those fields plus computer science with their interest in artificial intelligence and anthropology all kind of converge in this one interdisciplinary field which wants to use different methods and approaches to tackle the questions of mind.
And when you set out to get a PhD in cognitive science, did you imagine that you would specialize in the cognitive science of not humans but dogs?
It was actually a surprise to me, but I was very interested in how you get answers about what animals who can't give verbal responses are thinking. And dogs wound up being a good model for looking at behavior and making inferences to mind. So it happened that way, but it hadn't happened that way to people before. There wasn't a cognitive science of dogs.
Here again is Alexandra Horowitz reading from Inside of a Dog.
It perplexes me that some of the questions I have most often been asked about dogs, and that I have about my own dog, are not addressed by research. On matters of personality, personal experience, emotions, and simply what they think about, science is quiet. Still, the accumulation of data about dogs provides a good foothold from which to extrapolate and reach toward answers to those questions. The questions are typically of two kinds. What does the dog know? And what is it like to be a dog?
So you started the book writing about dogs at play. Why is that? Is play really so central to dogness?
One of the things I was super interested in was metacognitive states, like thinking about thinking, and theory of mind, thinking about myself and others' minds as having different information than mine. We definitely learn a lot about others' minds in social play. And so I thought, well, why don't we look at the behavior of social play of another animal and see if there's some of this complexity of like taking different roles, taking turns, and dogs just wound up being a really great subject to study because they're playing all the time. And hey, I could just go down to the dog park and I was researching my subjects, it almost seemed like a cheat. I mean, I will say it took me 6 months to come upon this realization that I should be studying dogs, even living with a dog and taking her to play a couple times a day. But I finally did. There are two ways to learn how play works and what playing dogs are thinking, perceiving, and saying. Be born as a dog, or spend a lot of time carefully observing dogs. The former was unavailable to me. Come along as I describe what I've learned by watching. In my study of dog play, I shadowed dogs with a video camera rolling and controlled my own delighted laughter at their fun long enough to record bouts of play from a few seconds to many minutes long. After a few hours of this, the fun stopped, the dogs would get packed into the backs of cars, and I would walk home, reflecting on the day. I'd sit down in front of my computer and play back the videos at an extremely slow rate. Only at this speed could I really see what had happened in front of me. What I saw was not a repeat of the scene I'd witnessed at the park. At this speed, I could see the mutual nods that preceded a chase. I saw the head jockeying, open-mouth volleys that blurred into unrecognizability in real time. I could count how many bites it takes over the course of 2 seconds before a bitten dog responds. I could count how many seconds it takes for a paused bout to resume. I also noted their postures, their proximity to one another, and which way they were looking at every moment. Then, so deconstructed, the play could be reconstructed to see what behaviors match what postures.
So, can you quickly describe, I guess, the status of dog research now versus, 20 or 30 years ago?
I mean, there were no research groups studying dogs, and now there are dozens of dedicated dog cognition labs. I mean, it's all over the world. So there's a huge amount of research being produced.
What would you say would be the central findings or understandings of dogs that prove that they have been really worthy of serious study?
I do think the dog's amazing social cognitive skills, their ability to kind of solve puzzles using others, thinking about others' minds, is one of the things that makes them extraordinary, and something we didn't expect to see except for in other primates, and we don't even see it in all primates. So that's one thing. The other aspect is just the real interest in imagining a point of view which is not visually based.
So let me ask you a quick SAT style question. The sense of smell is to a dog as blank is to a human.
Vision. They have this really dedicated instrument. Their nose, the very outside of their nose, is actually designed to catch a lot of odor molecules. It's moist, that helps doing that. The area in the back of their nose, the olfactory epithelium, that has the cells that translate this odor molecule into experience of smelling something, that area has hundreds of millions of cells in the dog. 300 million.
Compared to a human?
We have about 5 million cells.
So does that mean they smell, quote, better than us, like 60 to 1, or does it not translate that easily?
I think it's probably wrong-headed for me to try to translate it in terms of, they smell 100 times better than we do. But we do know in some cases they can smell many, many more minute particles of odorant than we can. Imagine if each detail of our visual world were matched by a corresponding smell. Each petal on a rose may be distinct, having been visited by insects leaving pollen footprints from faraway flowers. What is to us just a single stem actually holds a record of who held it and when. A burst of chemicals marks where a leaf was torn. The flesh of the petals, plump with moisture compared to that of the leaf, holds a different odor besides. The fold of a leaf has a smell, so does a dewdrop on a thorn. And time is in those details. While we can see one of the petals drying and browning, the dog can smell this process of decay and aging. Imagine smelling every minute visual detail. That might be the experience of a rose to a dog.
Coming up after the break, why are dogs match.
I do consider them little anthropologists in the room watching our behavior and learning.
We will be right back.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by Progressive Insurance, offering Snapshot, a device designed to reward safe drivers. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Now that's Progressive.
Support comes from Prestige Imports Porsche Audi, committed to helping Colorado car buyers stay safe with the Prestige Promise, 100% remote car buying process and valet service for follow-up vehicle maintenance. More at Prestige Imports.